Okay. I'm Mike Renfro, Director of Research Computing and Data at Tennessee Tech University. Uh, Jim and Trevor and Sharon are also in the group, and I will probably ramble a good bit, but there's other things that they're going to add in as well on their own as we get there. And so we are research computing and data broadly for Tennessee Tech University, which is not too surprising if you have not heard of Tennessee Tech, depending on where you're at. We are about a 10,000, almost 11,000 head count undergraduate or total enrollment. Uh, Vast majority are undergraduate. Vast majority are in state. We are a well-known school for certain things in Tennessee, but we're not super well known outside of the state of Tennessee. And so only about 6% of our kids are coming in from out of state, and only a vanishingly small percentage are international. 30% of our enrollment, undergraduate and graduate combined, though, is in either engineering or computer science, and it's all under the same College of Engineering. And so, by comparison, UT Knoxville, flagship R1 for the state of Tennessee, I think has 4 times our total head count, has like 6 times our graduate head count. Their total College of Engineering and Computer Science enrollment is only double what we have. So we are heavily a STEM dominant campus here. We have been Carnegie R2 since 2019. We've had a doctorate in engineering for probably going on about 50 years, but those programs are, the doctorates and the masters are expanding. And so now we've got 23 doctoral programs. But again, STEM dominant, half of those programs nearly are either got the word engineering or environmental science in them, or computer science nowadays. We got decent money getting up toward R1 status, but we do not have the production of graduates yet. We're at about 30 or so graduates per year. And we've had a lot of executive flipping over in the last year or so, where my CIO started in September. We have finished a provost search, and that guy will start in July. And we just announced a new VP of Student Affairs, and so a lot of things going on at that level as well. And so, I was one of the people that got drawn up here for going to engineering school 36-ish years ago at this point. And I've never entirely left. I spent a couple years of co-op at Oak Ridge National Lab, and I just sort of kept hanging out up here, and I've been doing research support for 26 years at this point. Not always research computing. I spent 17 of those years as just a research engineer in a center here. But I've been in central IT, information technology services, since 2017, mostly focused on research computing, but not always. We'll get to that in a minute. And anybody who has met me knows that basically I constantly mishear things as my people need me. And so you may bring up something, and I will try and give you an answer to it, because I cannot help myself. Sharon?
I came to work for Dr. Renfro as a student RCD facilitator when I came back to school in January 2023. I finished my computer science bachelor's degree in May of 2025 when I started working for Dr. Renfro as a temp RCD facilitator, and was his first full-time employee as a research technology engineer starting this last January. So far, mostly what I've done for him has been software and researcher facing, although that's not everything, and I enjoy the fact that it's not everything.
And we got Jim.
Hi, I also did my undergrad and at least most of a master's degree from Tennessee Tech. Still haven't finished that, maybe one day. I started as engineering, and I learned about our HPC program here, and I was like, that's pretty cool, and switched over. And that's when I met Dr. Renfro here, and I I didn't actually work for him as an undergrad. It was only when I started my grad degree that I had an assistantship where I was in the RCD group here before it was RCD. Then I went and worked for Oak Ridge National Lab as a systems engineer for Frontier, Summit, and all of our other systems for a couple of years. And I really missed it here, so I came back
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I officially started April 1st, so
Yeah.
still waiting to hear if it's a April Fool's joke or not.
So then we got Trevor.
Hello, I'm a student here. I started in the fall of 23, and I've actually started working for Dr. Renfro, I think just the last spring, so it's been about a year now. He's been great. This has been an awesome time here. Other than that, I've done other type of work here. I've been learning a lot. I've been enjoying my time here. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so based off of a few prompts that Patrick had sent me, I then blew that out into 20-something slides that I swear is not going to take the entire hour, but I am subject to a ramble sometimes. So around about 2016, I was part of a group that helped spec out the equipment for the first campus-wide HPC installation we were going to have. I had been running some smaller scale ones in my research center position, and then I ended up applying for the HPC administrator job in Central IT, which I had not planned when we first started that project, but I was persuaded to take a look at it. And so, we internally funded about $400,000 of equipment at that point. And so, like a lot of people, it was a whole bunch of Dell hardware, about 1,200 cores. We did our best figuring out how we were going to do networking and how many GPUs we were going to need. We started with only 4 K80 GPUs that were purely for simulation. AI was not really a thing at that point, hardly, just a little bit of deep learning. Spinning disks everywhere, and it took up slightly more than one full rack of space in our enterprise data center. And so we are a tenant, basically, in the thing that runs all the virtualization and everything else. We are a pretty small operation. Only 2,000 or so square feet in that entire data center for everybody. We started out with Red Hat and CentOS 7. We started out with Bright Cluster Manager. And so, I had my basic office right across the hall from the data center. And so people-wise at that point, I changed jobs. I was the only one in the group that was titled differently as an HPC systems administrator versus a regular systems administrator. But as we've got an exceedingly lean, arguably skeletal team in Central IT in general, I was not able to focus on HPC for that entire period. I've been doing Linux stuff for forever. And, I ended up needing to contribute some to the other groups as well, because again, our entire sysadmin team fits in a minivan, and if we throw in everybody in networking, we can still get in one vehicle of size and take a trip somewhere. But because I was in a more research computing focused position, I could get hooked up with SIG HPC systems professionals, campus champions, CARC, everybody else. It started to open my eyes into what was possible and what a research computing organization could look like versus being just the guy that handled the HPC. And so I helped get and corral everybody for our first CARC RCD capabilities model survey. We still have to do a follow-up on that one. And, and that was just sort of how it was for a few years. It was just basically me and the time I had available, which varied from week to week, depending on what was going on. And, sort of more or less random chance talking to one of the client facing or, regular desktop support facing managers that oversaw a whole bunch of student workers. He was basically saying that man, he would really like to put student workers somewhere other than where he's been putting them, but nobody's ever got a spot for them. That, that everything in the security office is so sensitive that the only things they can do is shred things. And that's no fun. So many things in the systems administration group are highly privileged operations, could not be delegated, or, wasn't the bandwidth to figure out how to do that for certain things. And so, immediately, my hand went up, across from his office, I will find something, And so, I knew from the CARC facings and everything else, I knew I could probably offload some of the researcher facing and facilitation type stuff to a student and fill in, as a backup when needed. And so I made my position description. I think I literally had 2 interviews scheduled out of however many kids applied in general for different positions. One bailed, one showed up, and it would have been fine. But I literally, that's a literal screenshot in figure 2 from my teams from 2021, where on one of the last interview slots for positions to just check out laptops in the library, my coworker basically asked this one student, "You got any other questions?" And she basically said that she was kind of interested in this position I had posted, but had been led to believe, not by us, that she was not qualified for that very entry-level open-ended position. I had not been asked about that. That did not come from me or anything else. Somebody just made some assumptions. And so within the space of 32 minutes between, I think I got one for you, I was interviewing Jules, and, computer science, high performance computing concentration, similar to Jim and Trevor going through. Also a communications minor or something. Ridiculously good writer, Jules is. If you look through the ACI ref, leading practices of facilitation, Jules is a massive contributor to that after the fact, because she went through and found all the dead links, formatting fixes, grammar fixes, different things that people just didn't catch the first go round. And so that also led me toward not knowing what I was doing, to what I've now called the tradition of every new student gets to build an open HPC installation in week 1. I don't care if they've ever done systems administration work before. I don't care if they have ever touched a Linux system before. We'll take them where they are and we'll get them up there. Okay. And part of that is a testament to how good the open HPC documentation is. It's also, sort of reinforcing that growth mindset that I always look for in especially student workers, but in general, to where we don't know exactly what somebody is going to bring us on any given day. And we got to be at least a little bit prepared to jump into it to the best that we can. And we don't have to be experts at everything. We just have to be better than our users are at a few things to make their lives better. Jim and I started an ACM SIG HPC student chapter around that time because, Jim saw lack of community, I guess, in that. He may have some other things to add on that. And then over on the side, to give you an idea where we started with physical infrastructure, that desk was mine and Jules's for about 2 years. And Jules gamely put up with those awful hard wooden bar stools for quite a while, because that's just what we had. You about the time that Jules came in, we were in the middle of putting together a campus cyber infrastructure proposal. It got awarded. I was co-PI on it, and surprise, as the HPC admin, I'm the one that put in most of the hours to make the thing function. And so we massively upgraded our GPUs. We upgraded the InfiniBand. We kept the old cluster around as a second partition. And Jules and I basically started building that cluster in OpenHPC and Rocky 8 and try to not make the same mistakes that I made on the first cluster. And as you might imagine, it took us a while to get that thing built, not because of Jules, but just because, again, I wanted to make sure that we made a foundation that would work from here on out. And we may not have 100% succeeded, but there's always one little extra thing you can do before you actually let people loose on the equipment. So as Sharon and Jim had said earlier, and stop me at any point if you need to. Sharon's non-traditional student started back in 2023. Yeah. And so changes majors, had some data science boot camp experience for tutoring there. Gets to overlap for a semester with Jules. Jules takes off at the end of a semester, takes a non-HPC industry job. Jim finishes his undergrad and gets an assistantship that's split 50-50 between his research advisor and us, which took a little bit of convincing at the College of Engineering level, but it did work. Along with that, I got to we got to upgrade our office space a little bit. So Jules and I at 120 square feet went up to me, Jules, and Sharon at 165, which if you can do math, you recognize we're not actually netting extra square feet per person. But it is giving us a little bit more room to breathe. And there was no way we were going to fit 3 people simultaneously in my old office. And so, a couple of panorama shots of that one from shortly after we moved in. And again, good enough to get the job done. While we were going on with that, Sharon got into Access Step, phases 1, 2, and 3, kept on with that internship for the rest of that year, basically, right? Mm-hmm. Got into PEARC24 student program, as part of that. And so she takes off to NCSA for a summer, and works up there. And so I guess at that point it was just Jim, you and me doing the summer stuff that time. And so we had a high school group that we'll talk about in a minute. And then the 3 of us went and did a workshop at PEARC based off of some of the things that we had learned over time in OpenHPC. Jim started his gig at OLCF about a year after he started with us. And this is not a direct quote, but it's thematically accurate, at least, that Jim benefited from the stuff that he got to do over here. That the fact that we are that hands-on, we're lean, we're, again, way too much going on for the number of people that we've got, but it exposes people to a lot of things that are good practical experience that aren't necessarily going to show up in a traditional purely academic and research experience for a student. Sharon was about to graduate, and so I'll admit I probably panicked a little bit and said, oh my God, we got to have overlap. Sharon and Jules had an entire semester of overlap. Again, things were busy. Things got shuffled around, and so we didn't get to even talk to Trevor until like April, I think, of that semester. And so thankfully, some strings got pulled and some budget was found for some lapsed positions elsewhere in central IT to where we could keep Sharon employed, at least on an hourly basis. And she was, gracious, or whatever other synonym you want to say, enough to live with some of that uncertainty that she didn't have to. Jules, that same year, I don't know if Jules is actually on the call or not. I invited her. But Jules started a gig at NREL. And I'm perfectly happy for Jules to have any position that she wants anywhere that satisfies what she wants to do for a living. But it does give me a little bit of an ego boost that half of the students that I've had go through here have wound up at DOE labs doing HPC work. May not be able to keep that percentage, for forever. Trevor's not all on you, but but you are the next student.
That's my goal.
But it's okay if you do whatever you need to. And so this last September, I get officially promoted to RCD director. Funny thing is, every bit of the work that went into me being systems administrator to being promoted to HPC director all happened while we were short an actual official CIO. So her first day as CIO and my first day as RCD director were basically the same day. Now, I got promoted, but again, we're lean, we're extra lean, we're skeletal. And so the systems administration group that I was in got no backfill for my position. And we started and still are in a condition of having zero operating budget of our own. And so it's a constraint. We did manage, though, to get Sharon into a full-time salaried position. We had advertised and Jim applied for, and Jim was selected for our second position. And yes, he took a bit of a pay cut to come back here. And so there are some non-fiduciary advantages to being here. And different people can rank those as they want. But also very happy to have him back. Trevor hopefully graduates in December. We've got SC program or SC student program he's applied for, and a few other things. And so, infrastructure wise, we've actually got some fairly a reasonably good setup here, considering the building. That photo is the room that we're in now. The door open is to the adjacent room, which is where we were before. And so we've got quite a bit of contiguous square footage here in a highly visible location. We have had to scrounge up a lot of equipment that was just sort of sitting idle from place to place. One table got moved out of my office into here. We scrounged another desk. We actually did okay on monitors. Surprisingly, but only because, they've been sitting around idle. So what are we doing with this agglomeration of people? Well, we're still managing a cluster, hardware-wise, configuration-wise, also handling open on-demand. We have data transfer nodes that still need some extra setup on them for Globus. We handle the perf sonar for our science DMZ. We occasionally receive or commandeer maybe old hardware that we're looking at for extra compute capacity and maybe some new storage systems. And it's nice to be able to kind of explore some of that. There are advantages to being in central IT for some of that, in terms of something might come off of being our primary virtualization cluster. And it may not be the fastest thing out there, but it is capacity. And it is at very low acquisition cost for us. Keep onboarding people, keep supporting our existing ones. And so we had, 214 unique users, 9 courses, and 87 some sort of projects going on last year for that size of university. We do training workshops. We do informational workshops where we'll show up at a class and either onboard the class, or we'll just show off some of the things that we do. We've got like a little baby cluster that Trevor's worked on that's basically made up of cast-off desktops, and we can carry that into a classroom and say, this may not be literally an HPC in performance, but the architecture is the same, the software is the same. It's accessible there. We run software carpentries workshops whenever we can. We need to do more often of those. And the thing is, we consider ourselves to be research computing, not strictly high performance computing. We don't care exactly if your job can't fill up the entire cluster. We get a lot of mileage from users just with array jobs that are like single core stuff. But if that's what gets them science, if that's what gets them published, and that lets them be productive, there's no shame in that to us. I've also showed off this in a couple of different contexts. But one thing that we got into, again, not quite knowing what we were getting into in 2023, I guess was our first one that we did. We sort of took over an existing section of our what we call our Governor School for Emerging Technologies. I've got a few other pictures from earlier years, but this last year was the one where I got the best pictures, I think. And so we would get 6 or 7 rising juniors or seniors from all over Tennessee. They would, for our part, they would rank different areas that they might want to work in. Most of the time, out of the 30-something students that show up, we can get them their first or second choice. And so we had 6 or 7 kids each year. And basically, we take them through, here's what an HPC is. We take them through building an HPC and virtualization on their laptops. We build HPCs out of cast-off hardware. We let them pick a project that is computationally intense. One year was Stockfish Chess Engine running on their cluster. One year was reinforcement learning for Lunar Lander. That one worked out pretty well. They then wanted to do reinforcement learning for Tetris with this group. That, in terms of how it worked out in terms of results, was awful. The computational complexity of Tetris versus Lunar Lander is enormous. But one of those kids at a minimum is going to be attending this year starting in mechanical engineering. And we might see some others by the time we get done. Okay, how we are doing things, and it may not be the core of what this call would be about, but sometimes the tools that we use inform, or give people ideas of what they can do differently or what they can replicate. And so, how we manage things, access requests in particular, we funnel those through our existing ITS ticketing system, which is Team Dynamics. I've got a small pile of PowerShell and Python scripts that I run right now. Again, when it was just me, that was just how it was. As things move on with Sharon and Jim, I'm working out how to delegate some of that to them, not just in terms of my own emotional delegation, but like getting the permission structure right to where they don't have to have domain admin to the entire university to get that job done, which is what I've been leaning on. We do walk-in / come in on Teams office hours twice a week during a period when nobody has classes. We'll talk to people whenever they show up. We have booking shows up later for scheduled appointments. We just keep a public-facing Teams, a Microsoft Teams team. Tennessee Tech is a big Microsoft shop for all kinds of things. So we keep general channels for everybody. We keep private channels for ourselves and for particular classes. And we just basically say, we're just going to try and keep things there. We have a ton of just little ad hoc chats with our users in Teams. We have gotten a lot of mileage between, making sure that if they message me or they message Sharon or whoever, that we turn that into a group chat. We name it according to the user and RCD, just what's easier for us to find and for them to find. And we tell them how to move it toward the top of their chats so they can find it later. That way, none of us is a bottleneck necessarily for somebody's progress. Again, Microsoft Shop. Microsoft Bookings is where we tell people to go for. You pick the time you want to meet, how long you want to meet, how you want to meet, and nowadays they can pick who they want to meet with if they have a particular preference. There is no back and forth of figuring out when they can show up or anything else. If they've got a time constraint, they figure that out. It works around our schedules, and it's all hands off for us. We keep a shared mailbox. Didn't cost us a dime. It's readable by all 4 of us and respondable by all 4 of us. Website, that QR code goes to it. We host that on GitHub pages. Part of that is because at the moment, Central IT does not exactly have a public-facing website for publicity purposes. We have our ticketing system, our knowledge base, our service catalog type things, but we don't have like an IT directory or anything that's outside of that context. And so we anticipated / knew we were going to need Googleable, easy to read, public facing stuff that went beyond what what Team Dynamics would give us. And so GitHub Pages, Jekyll, a Let's Encrypt certificate, and access to our domain to where we can be part of, www.rcd.tntech.edu and not some random github.io site. We picked a Jekyll theme and ran with it. We made it match the university branding. We did a lot of work on accessibility, performance, all kinds of things to where if and when I needed to go approach our communications and marketing group, which I did, to say, oh, sorry, I did not realize we had a policy that was coming up about how websites were to be done. May I ask forgiveness now? Here are the things that we did to make sure that you wouldn't be angry with us. And we did all these in advance. And it's been perfectly fine. At the urging of our CIO, we also put together just basically a one-pager PDF that summarizes who we are individually and the sort of stuff that we do. That's a real easy handout / send somebody an email, whether that's a dean or a new faculty or whatever. We are working on, we have what we call Student Research Day. It's now Student Research and Creative Inquiry Symposium. Used to just be called Student Research Day, where there's a poster session. And we are, for the low cost of somewhere between $0 and $140, $0 if we all did it in-house, $140 if we get our communications and marketing group to design us something on a rush order. We can then get things that we can have our users, give us a little, maybe not credit, but show that we made an impact on them, and then we're going to be collecting up all of those and have a web page of it, QR code on the sticker. QR code goes to a website that says, here's all the people that we've worked with. If you think this one student's thing is cool, go make sure you also stop by this one and hopefully kind of pay back some of that to them. We've also gone to new grad student meet and greets. We got some really good, completely unsolicited thanks, praise, whatever, from a couple of the people that were helping run that, because they were our students. We had helped them on their research, or on one of them. She's a grad student in the grad school now, in the grad school office. We helped her with her computer science capstone project, which would not have happened otherwise. So
we also have the plug-in for new faculty coming on.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not sure. Is Sharon audible? It's a really good microphone, but
it's challenging. But if you could repeat that, that'd be great.
Yeah, just takes over that way.
Sure. We are also working with our Office of Research for any kind of new grants that are being applied for, or new research faculty that are coming on board, to have an automatic notification go out to those PIs or those faculty to notify them of our availability and services.
So we're also doing, we're fairly large GitHub people in terms of how we like to operate. And so we've got a piece of the enterprise subscription. We've got an organization where we post things. And so whether it's stuff that's for the public or things that we keep internally, we basically have a researcher-facing repository that has a whole bunch of stuff in it that's just running notes per project or per user. And it's not everything, but it's really handy to be able to just bring that up in VS Code and say, just give me a full text search of this entire folder tree for this term, this, or I know I did it with this student. Where can I find this so I can apply it for somebody else? And it's not a fancy knowledge base, but it is at least a record of what we did. To be honest, for things that are not purely reactive and recall based, we are still working that stuff out. Okay. The Team Dynamics web interface is kind of tedious the way that we've got it. Now, I'm not saying that's TDX. It might be how we've chosen to set up TDX. It might just be that we have unrealistic expectations for what it can do. And so we are strongly considering setting up some either Python and or PowerShell scripts that'll just let us interact with those, because we would much rather, in a lot of our cases, much rather just have a script that we can just parse arguments on and just have the data go where it needs to go without us having to babysit, tabbing through things. Same thing with project management. And so, we don't want to go completely off the reservation and say we're going to do everything on our own in GitHub or something, because that's not how the broader organization works. And so we might need to basically keep some things in sync between GitHub and other tools and TDX. So again, full disclosure, we ain't figured that part out yet. How do we pay for things? Blissfully, I have not had to think real hard about that, aside from just trying to get the funds in place to get people at all. At the moment, every bit of our payroll, at least for me, Sharon, and Jim, is all hard money straight into ITS's budget. Trevor's payroll probably comes out of student fees. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I'm betting it does. And there is an ongoing conversation, not just for the student workers, but for staff in general, of where should that funding be coming from? If it's not directly student impacting, and we love Trevor, and all of our users love Trevor, they're the ones that have met him. But we serve a fairly small population of students here. We do not serve 10,700, head count of people. We serve a few hundred. And so having everybody chip in on Trevor's payroll is probably not, the best use of a lot of those people's money.
Gotcha.
Our new fiscal year will start in July, but because a lot of that is contingent on enrollment numbers, we won't know necessarily for certain that we've got the money until October. So we are still in kind of a scramble mode for things. We expect that our hardware is going to come out of CC Star, MRI, and similar proposals. Most of our researchers do not have large enough projects to fund an entire HPC just out of direct project purchases. We've got a whole lot of sort of that long tail, kind of lower dollar science and engineering going on. And so that could change in the future, but there we are for now. We are confident that we're going to get backfill for my position, which matters to RCD in that I can hopefully stop paying as much attention to the broader enterprise than I do to RCD. As people who have known me for a while might already know, how many people attending PEARC have actively worked a CrowdStrike outage? It was just me, not affected by it, but responsible for helping fix it. How many people have worked on I absolutely cannot disclose this one thing that happened at another PEARC or the night before another PEARC because it's probably still under NDA. Nobody else was working with that one. And so, I've asked our CIO to talk to our CFO and see if we can get some indirect costs pulled over here, whether it's explicitly to RCD or to ITS or whatever, because I think that's reasonable. Also, other things organizationally, I have never been a straight up manager with a direct report until last May. It's always been student workers, and student workers, I was on the order of 50 years old before I had anybody reporting to me on any official way. And so, trying to pay attention to that, and it's a learning curve. And so if you are in a small organization, and you start an RCD group, you may have to make that same transition from I do things to I manage people in addition to doing things. And there's a lot to that. And so I've got a couple references in there, Managing Humans and the RAND's Leadership Slack associated with Michael Loppergood. And I also signed up for this Engineering Manager's Survival Guide course that I'm a little bit behind on. That hopefully is also going to fill in some other things. And I will say, if you are getting started, there's going to be all kinds of things going on that you do not have influence over in terms of your budget and a lot of things. You do have influence over how the kind of culture that you build. And we don't have a slide or a picture of this one. Creating culture does not cost money. One of the things that occasionally comes up with us is we have a big win somewhere for somebody, and
He's getting something.
and at zero cost to anybody at the university. Burger King, I was on my way out of breakfast from there one morning onto campus. This was during their You Rule ad campaign, and so they handed everybody a little Burger King crown. And, well, I didn't want to leave it in my car, so I brought it into the office. And then somehow or another, and somebody else will have to fill in the details on this one, this became you wear the RCD crown, when you get the thing done for the user, and every one of us has worn that crown at least at one point. I think my crown might have actually been for saving the enterprise rather than research computing. I don't remember. I remember being very, very tired when y'all put that on me.
Heavy as the crown. Heavy as the crown.
Yes.
Heavy is
And so, there are things you can do with that. Patrick had a header in there for political battles, and I have thought 2 or 3 different ways of putting this out there, including a giant, another figure that just said redacted. But what I can say, and this is advice to everybody that gets into this kind of position, whether or not the quip for Sayers Law over there on the left is strictly accurate or not, or that it's how the cause and effect goes. Politics exist at the university and at the state level and other things that you have no idea about. The playing fields that you wind up on in those political arenas are not always going to be even. And sometimes you will not be actually at the field. That field will be for other people that are either working on your behalf or have their own priorities for completely understandable reasons. And, I think Henry Neiman had a tagline for something. I don't know if he invented it or got it from somewhere else. What got me here will not get me there. And so the skills that it takes and the control you have over being a good systems administrator or individual contributor in general are not going to be 100% interchangeable with the ones that it takes to be a good leader or politics adjacent. And so be aware that the situations can be very different in those areas. Okay. Dang. I said we were not going to spend the whole hour.
Well, we did.
But I could predict this, that I like a ramble.
I will add to your last statement that our policy overall has always been just keep doing what we're doing and do the best we can at it. Everything else kind of tends to work its way out eventually.
Okay. And, and final bits is you can have people without equipment easy, and you can have better results with people without equipment than you can have having equipment without people. The cluster that the university spends a lot of money on that nobody can use or nobody can get onto because somebody's too overloaded is not helping. You can outsource the compute to access or somebody quicker or more easily than you can outsourcing the support. Okay.
Got two questions.
Okay, so we got two questions in the chat. For those who are student RCD facilitators, and I don't know if this is for the broader audience or just for the three people who aren't me. How much mentorship did they feel they needed in their RCD work? What type of learning helped them the most in their first few months? And I'm now shutting up, putting my hands over, this is how I shut up.
If, I have quite a lot to say about that, actually. And everyone will know. I'm kidding. Coming into this job is developing a whole different set of skills than you learn in your typical coursework. There's not a single course, there's one course, but it doesn't really touch anything RCD in the computer science curriculum here that teaches you anything close to systems administration or especially how to work with researchers to meet their needs and such. And the type of learning that helped the most was kind of that sink or swim, throw in, start that first open HPC virtual cluster. And sink or swim can be kind of scary. It's a situation that I've been in a lot in new jobs. But the important thing is the environment that's fostered around that. And Mike does such a good job for us as student workers, when I was a student worker at least, of fostering an environment of I'm going to be blunt with you to tell you the answer, but there's no answer that I will refuse to give you. There's no stupid question. And also just treating us like equals from the get-go. We don't feel like student workers under him so much as part of a team to meet the needs of the university. There may have been a lot of mentorship needed, but every single bit of it was easily met, I feel.
I will interject that I've been exceedingly fortunate on the students that I've had. I've never had to do a disciplinary, or anything else. There have been conversations from time to time, of a little bit of correction here and there, but nothing egregious. And I think part of that is whether it's, I don't know how much of it is luck and how much of it is the only people that would apply for a position over here are of a certain subset of humanity to where that is less of an issue. There is a Mike question of how do you find a good balance between improving and working on the system and user support and training? I don't know that I've ever found a good balance. It's just you just deal with it, there's documentation that we need to update. There's literal technical debt on the system side of things. And, I guess part of it is accept that it's never going to be exactly what you want, all the time, and just do the best you can. Jules! Jules is in the chat. We didn't know if she was going to make it or not. How are you doing, young lady? You don't have to talk, but we are glad to see you.
All right. Thanks, Mike and team. Any final questions before we wrap it up?
I will add, if you're a small shop
This
and
way.
you're considering whether or not a student worker might be a beneficial addition to your team, getting started a certain amount of job shadowing, I think is necessary. And the way that we kind of enrolled in this office is that in the beginning, you watch and you learn and you do what you can. When I was working for Mike as a student worker, mostly what I did was go through the open tickets and is like, oh, that's an easy issue. I can do that for him so that he doesn't have to worry about that. Or that's an issue that I think I can maybe do, but if I get stuck, then I can say, these are the things that I've done and help me move through it. Mike was really great to give us the freedom to go out and learn what we needed to learn to address the issues we were addressing. But then also to step in and help us when we ask for it. So that if you're asking as a, how do I consider getting this done? Maybe think about bringing someone on to sit beside you for a while. That's going to be a time commitment on your part.
And I can't stress enough for if you do bring on student workers, that kind of the environment that you foster, whether that's, going out to lunch every once in a while or maybe story time once in a while, that is one of the most important things, at least I think all of us can agree, to making your worker feel like this person doesn't see me as like an underling. This person cares about me and will not think any less of me if I don't know how to do anything. And that opens up such a avenue to be comfortable in asking questions about the things you don't know, rather than just staring at the screen floundering, especially if you do have a student worker who might not have the industry experience to be confident enough to ask those questions without feeling like they're blowing something.
Great. Well, it takes us about to time. So thanks Tennessee Tech University and the crew for that really interesting presentation. And we'll see everyone next month for our accessibility month. Working on lining up a speaker. We're almost there. Not quite ready to announce it yet, but I think we'll have a really great accessibility speaker for May. So we'll see you all then. And until then, take it easy. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for having us.